It is another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the 4 movies released on December 5th, 2008, as we're heading into the final 4 weeks of 2008. We begin with 4 movies. This is usually kind of the dumping week between Thanksgiving and then the weeks leading up to Christmas, so not going to get a whole lot of good stuff in wide release, but you do get a couple of decent Oscar contenders here and there. We'll get to those as we go. We'll get to the one as we go along here, but first off, let's get to probably one of the better movies to come out the weekend after Thanksgiving, per se. And honestly, you can look at this and think to yourself, yeah, this is definitely a much better Punisher movie than the John Travolta one from 4 years ago. This is Punisher Warzone. Yeah, that's still the best Punisher movie we've gotten so far. I mean, I saw the Dolph Lundgren one, I saw the Thomas Jane one, but this is the best Punisher we've ever had in a movie or TV form. Okay, maybe I'm over-exaggerating a little bit. John Barenthal was really good. Shane from The Walking Dead and the Netflix show. But in terms of movies, this one is the best one of the 3 that I've seen. Here you have the late Ray Stevenson playing Frank Castle, the ex-military man whose family was killed by criminals, who becomes a vigilante known as the Punisher, going after a whole mob family against everyone except enforcer Billy Risotto, played by Dominic West. He tracks Risotto down and chases him into a vat that is used for crushing bottles, and Frank turns the crusher on, hoping it would take care of him, but it doesn't. He survives, but sustains very serious injuries that even with plastic surgery has his face looking like a jigsaw puzzle, so he decides to adopt the name Jigsaw. Frank, who's killed one of his people who is unknown to him, is an undercover Fed and decides to pack it in. But when he learns that Risotto didn't die and is looking for the money he entrusted to the Feds and will go looking for it at his home, which means his family is in danger. So Frank tries to save them, but Risotto wants revenge on Frank, so he breaks off his brother, who is so crazy that he is committed to an asylum to deal with him. And yeah, overall, this is the best Punisher movie. Like I said before, I mean, this is still the best of the 3 films. Yes, there is a lot of problems here, and there are a lot of problems all across the board in here, but this is about as close to a Punisher movie that we've gotten that has actually lived up to what the comics were about. And yeah, it's just a very good movie. Ray Stevenson, such a good Punisher in here. He's good as Frank Castle, combining both the conflicts of life without his family and being the hard-ass Punisher going around killing people. And then Dominic West gives this great over-the-top performance as Jigsaw that's a lot of fun to watch. And there's a lot of good supporting roles in the cast here, specifically Wayne Knight, who really captures Microchip very well. I was actually really surprised how good he was. The violence is over the top, but at the same time, it's fun. Like, it's so much fun to watch how the Punisher takes care of their targets, and it's so satisfying to watch. It's just, okay, it's kind of like watching a Saw movie. It's just like, what new and creative ways are they going to go around killing people? And they do it in some very fun, over-the-top, silly ways. It's also a well-paced movie. There's no points that feel like they're lagging. It moves at a normal 3-act structure. Those are the positives I have for the film. There are some negatives. The movie kind of starts off with a story pretty slowly. It doesn't really distance itself from other superhero movies, and it really doesn't feel like they wanted to try anything different in that department. Like, we have a moment that's right out of the first Batman movie where Jigsaw sees a doctor after his incident, and he gives the cliche line, "Don't call me this, call me Jigsaw." Like, we've seen that done before over and over and over again, and it feels unnecessary here. The action sequences themselves also aren't as impressive as they could have been. I feel like they could have been so much more interesting and more intriguing to watch overall here. But maybe the biggest problem overall is whether Lexi Alexander, the director of this, wants to play the story seriously or play it for laughs. And with the over-the-top violence, you can see maybe she's playing it for laughs, but then when you get to the story, it seems like they're getting too serious about it, and it really contradicts what direction they're trying to go for here. The only person within the film that was actually trying to bring the Punisher to form was Stevenson, as he's the only one who actually kind of gives a crap about his role in this. And yeah, it just makes this a good Punisher movie. This is still the best one of the bunch. And yeah, it's not going to join the ranks of some of Marvel's best movies as a whole, but if I was to recommend a Punisher movie out of the 3 that we've had, definitely this one is the best one in general. But I would tell them also, go in there expecting a lot of things to not make a whole lot of sense. But if you want a good, fun Punisher movie that's better than the other ones you've gotten, look no further than Punisher Warzone. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Cadillac Records. One of those movies that you really look at and think that there's good possibilities of what they could do here, but they just they don't stick the landing, and I think it really hurts the film in the long run. The story here is that you have 1947 in Chicago. You have a Jewish immigrant from Poland and bar owner Leonard Chess, played by Adrian Brody, who hires a blues combo, including guitarist Muddy Waters, played by Jeffrey Wright, and harmonica player Little Walker, played by Columbus Short. Waters and Walter's success leads to Chess opening the doors for black musicians and begins a new record label in 1950 called Chess Records. This attracts stars like Etta James, played by Beyonce Knowles, Howlin' Wolf, who's played by Iman Walker, and Chuck Berry, played by Mos Def. And inevitably, business and personal lives blur as the somewhat turbulent lives of the musicians play out. And that's kind of where the film falls apart, is that it's a very predictable storyline here, and it's one of those movies where the performances are really good, but the story really is your typical music biopic storyline here, and it just kind of falls apart pretty quickly, even though the stars in here are really good. You got Beyonce Knowles, Jeffrey Wright, Adrian Brody, Cedric the Entertainer, Gabrielle Union, Columbus Short, Emmanuel Shariki, Mos Def, Eric Bogosian. I mean, a good cast overall here. A solid director overall, Darnell Martin, who's made a couple of underrated little gems, like I Like It Like That, and Those Eyes Are Watching God, the Halle Berry movie that she did for ABC. But it's the story that really kind of falls apart here, because there's really nothing new that catapults this into something that is something new, unique, and different. And it feels like they're trying to copy the success of Dreamgirls in a way, especially with Beyonce Knowles in there. But I mean, the performances overall are what carry it, and something I would say it's something you should definitely check out. But other than that, though, there's not really much there I can really recommend about the film in general, besides the performances. I think the performances are the one thing that holds it together, but even then, at the very most, I think it's worthy of a one-time watch to see some really solid performances all across the board. And hey, Adrian Brody proves that he did make a couple of good movies that, after he won his first Oscar with The Pianist, I mean, his career after the first Oscar win was not a complete disaster, at least not yet, at least. He was making some good movies, but he did make his fair share of bad ones that we've talked about before, and ones we'll certainly get into in the years to come. But as of this film, mixed opinion. For a one-time watch, I think it's perfectly salvageable, but other than that, though, you're not going to want to watch it again after it, So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that's Alan Rickman starring in an ensemble crime comedy, Nobel's Son. And speaking of movies that have been pretty much been there, done that, you've seen this storyline done before. A dysfunctional family dealing with the kidnapping of their son, played by Brian Greenberg, for ransom, knowing that the father, played by Alan Rickman's winning of the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. And Mary Steenburgen plays his wife. You see Bill Pullman in here, Danny DeVito, and Elijah Dushku, which, I'll be honest with you, the only reason I wanted to see this movie was because Elijah Dushku gets naked. And, hey, I was 18 years... No, I was 19 years old when this came out, so yeah, I'll freely admit to that. And watching it, I'll say it's not the worst, but it's definitely a film you've seen done to death before so many times in the past. I mean, you've seen this story done before in much better movies. I mean, stuff like Saving Silverman, Ruthless People, not even Trading Places, but, there have been so many other movies with this same plot line that have been done so much better, and I guess you could say this isn't the worst one of the bunch, but it's definitely a very formulaic movie. And again, kind of like with Cadillac Records, I think it's the performances that kind of stick with it, so it is tolerable at least. I mean, everybody here plays their parts to a T. I mean, you get a movie with Alan Rickman, Danny DeVito, and Bill Pullman, and Mary Steenburgen, and I mean, it's going to turn out to be somewhat entertaining on that front. And it is what it is. I mean, it's a film that you gotta know going into it what exactly it is. And if you don't want to see another formulaic movie like this that you've seen done to death before, you probably aren't gonna like it. But if you go into it wanting to see something good out of it, like some good performances from the veteran actors in here, you definitely get that in here. But it's one I'd say I would not recommend as a must-see film. Maybe as a one-time watch, kind of like with Cadillac Records. I think you'll be more than perfectly salvageable with that. So with that said, let us go ahead and move on to the last film we have here. Easily the best film of the entire weekend. Ron Howard's latest film, Frost Nixon. Based off of Peter Morgan's famous Broadway play of the same name, which won Frank Langella a Tony Award. This one, Peter Morgan's legendary battle between Richard Nixon, played by Langella, as the disgraced president with a legacy to save, and David Frost, played by Michael Sheen, a jet-setting television personality with a name to make, in the story of the historic encounter that changed both of their lives. For 3 years after being forced from office, Nixon remained silent, but in the summer of 1977, the steely, cunning former commander-in-chief agrees to sit for one all-exclusive interview to confront the questions of his time in office in the Watergate scandal that had ended his presidency. Nixon surprised everyone in selecting Frost as his televised confessor, intending to easily outfox the breezy British showman and secure a place in the hearts and minds of Americans, as well as the $600,000 fee. Likewise, Frost's team harbors doubts about their boss's ability to hold his own, but as cameras rolled, a charred battle of wits resulted. And just like the Broadway play itself, this is a movie that works because of the performances by Frank Langella and Michael Sheen. It's a battle between two guys who, one of them is supposed to be so slick and so easy to, hoping that he's going in for a good interview, because he chooses this guy who comes off as this kind of peppy, eccentric guy. But no, Michael Sheen goes in there and really just brings down the house with him, and it's a really good movie with these two guys going at it. And not only with those two guys, you have a cast that includes some top talents: Kevin Bacon, Rebecca Hall, Toby Jones, Matthew McFadden, Oliver Platt, Sam Rockwell. Just a really, really good cast overall in this movie. And it's hard to believe that there has been so many movies about Richard Nixon, and all of them have been pretty good. Anthony Hopkins starred in Nixon back in '95, the Oliver Stone movie, which was a really good, interesting character study on Richard Nixon as a whole, done very well in that movie. And then in 1981, Philip Baker Hall starred in the movie version about Richard Nixon. 1984, it was called Secret Honor, directed by Robert Altman. It's a great movie where Philip Baker Hall just dominates in that performance as Richard Nixon. It's a film you should definitely check out. I don't know if it's available to stream or it's on Blu-ray or DVD or not, but if you can find that movie somewhere, definitely look for that film, because that's a great film. This is a really good movie. It's a really good film that does a great job of getting you inside the minds of both of these guys. You have two different interviewers. You have two different people in an interview. On one side, you have the journalist that wants to do his job and get into Richard Nixon's head. And then you have the other guy, Richard Nixon, where he thinks that this is going to be a cakewalk interview, but he really has to go in there and challenge, keeping it together until the point where he basically decides to blurt out the truth that he didn't think anyone would ever know. And it just does a very good job of handling that. It's a really engaging film that just keeps you invested all across the board here. And it's one of Ron Howard's most underrated movies as a filmmaker. It did not do well at the box office, unfortunately, but it did go on to be nominated for 5 Academy Awards, including Frank Langella for Best Actor, Ron Howard for Best Director and Best Picture. It's a great movie. It's one you should definitely check out. It's easily one of the best movies that came out that year. Frost Nixon, a great, great film. Can't recommend this one enough. So with all of that said, we're going to wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and another packed week coming for you on the next episode with 7 movies to look at, including Keanu Reeves and Jennifer Connelly in the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, a new holiday movie, which is not a good sign if it's coming out just 2 weeks before Christmas, Nothing Like the Holidays, featuring an ensemble cast that includes Alfred Molina, Elizabeth Pena, and Deborah Messing. We also have the infamous Delgo, which was one of the more notorious animation flops of all time. Meryl Streep leads the cast in Doubt, Clint Eastwood in his much better film than Changeling in 2008, Gran Torino. We have Kate Winslet getting her Academy Award winning performance in The Reader. And also, we have Che Part 1 and Che Part 2, starring Benicio del Toro as Che Guevara, directed by Steven Soderbergh. So we have a lot of movies to look at next time around. We will take a look at them on the next episode tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. With all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and the bell. That's where you get updates on when new videos come out, and we do post new videos here every day. So, I'm off. I'll see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.